Hello and welcome to the TechLeague podcast. Hello and welcome to the TechLeague podcast. I am Toby Sears, your host, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Christian Fisher.
Hello.
We are going to have a bit of a shorter one, I think, this week because we've come across something cool that we want to share a little bit about. We've been continuing our deep dive and our investigations into EU cloud EU alternatives to hosting and development. And we were looking specifically for somewhere to host the new TechLeague podcast website, techleaguepodcast.com. Nice little shout out there. And we came across this service called, Zavi's been pestering us for a while to look into this service called BunnyCDN. And we wanted to have a chat about that today because we got our website up and running on there very easily. And it seems like a pretty cool tool. So we're going to go over that today, how we're using it, what we think of the first impressions. We can have a bit of a dig into like where they're hosted or where they live and their sovereignty, as well as pricing models and whatnot. But so far, I'm going to give you a quick summary. I'm super impressed so far.
Can you explain the tech setup that you have?
Yeah, okay. So I wanted to create a website for the podcast, simply. And so I decided, along with Claude, to use Astro, which is a Vite like content. It's like a framework built on top of Vite, which lets you do like blogging and stuff very easily. Rendering with Markdown, really, not super complicated. And I wanted somewhere that I could easily upload to an object storage, have a CDN in front of it, point a domain to it, and easy peasy like that. Deploy with Terraform. Well, deploy the infrastructure with Terraform, and then the way I usually do static files is I have a GitHub action, say, that uploads to an let's talk AWS. I would have a GitHub action that uploads to an S3 CloudFront in front of it. And then you upload to S3, just updating files that have changed, and then you purge the cache. Done. Mm-hmm. And then part of the Terraform setup is to set up the S3 bucket, set up the CloudFront, and then set up the domain redirection. And then usually as well, set up SSL for the domain.
So this is a static website.
Yeah, so this is a static website hosted on object storage. They call it, what do they call it? Storage zones. So
Bunny storage.
Bunny storage, yeah. They have a really cool theme throughout everything of like bunny rabbits doing different stuff. And they named some of the products to reflect this. So like an origin is a leap zone, not an origin. And then something I found really cool. I don't know why I found it really cool, but like, so I was setting up, BunnyCDN has DNS management built in. You can, and it was really nice to use actually. So I have the domain techleaguepodcast.com registered in 123reg, which is where I normally register stuff from a long time ago when I lived in the UK. And then I set it up in the console. I said, I want to add this domain, and it pulled all the records and populated it super nicely. I didn't need those records, so I said, just set it up empty. But when I wanted to change the name service, what you do is they usually give you set up the zone in the new place. They give you the name server records, and then you go to the registrar and you change the name service in the registrar. Usually it's something super boring like ns24.aws.net or something like that. But in here it was Kiki and Coco.bunnynet.net. I was like, I don't know why small things like that I really like. Yeah, so I set up the DNS. That went super smoothly. And then I, in Terraform, imported that zone, created a Bunny storage zone.
That's the object store, right?
Which is the object store, yeah. And then set that up as the leap zone for the CDN. So I set up a CDN with the origin pointing to that object store. And then I got Terraform to create the root A record and a www root A record to point to the CDN. Works super fine out of the box. And it also auto-configures SSL, which was really nice.
So you didn't need to create your own certificates. You didn't need to do the DNS verification.
None of that. Super easy. Yep. So I got that run, and then you go into the console, you get an API key, export it as an environment variable, and then Terraform apply. Done. Well,
how do you upload the static files? Is that compatible with S3 or FTP?
I think from what I've read, the S3 compatibility is on the way, but it seems to be FTP at the moment. Not super great.
So your deployment method pushes the files through FTP.
Yeah. So there's a GitHub action already for Bunny I just used that. So I said upload these to this storage zone using this API key. Well, no, actually storage zone password. So I'm guessing it is FTP. And then it uploaded all the files which have changed as part of the action. And then, do a cache purge. Pretty good.
That's nice.
I mean, it was really quick to get set up. 10 minutes max, including sign up. So, I mean, I went there. I logged in with my Google account, and then I had to do email verification, and then you get $20 of credits. And then if you add a credit card, which I did, you get another $30 of credits. And then I was done. I just pulled the API key, and that was it. And
I looked at the pricing. Speaking of dollars, there, I looked at the pricing, and I haven't validated the numbers, but they claim to be cheaper than other major CDNs. I don't want to name drop there. And I noticed that they have two different tiers. I guess you use the standard tier.
Yeah,
they also have a volume.
Yeah.
So they also have the volume tier that is optimized for videos and like high bandwidth, like large volumes, but they have less points of presences that can support that. And it's cheaper actually because with higher volume you get economy of scale, but the latency goes up. So they, instead of making the trade-offs, like you can choose what you want. Like you want low latency, a bit more expensive, or high throughput, higher latency for videos and streaming and this type of thing. So that's pretty cool. And pricing wise, it looked totally fine.
But did you see where the pops were? Because I got the option to choose where I wanted to put the CDN in. I just did all of the zones.
Yeah. So we have to say that the company is from Slovenia. That's European Union.
With some UK presence as well, right?
I've seen US phone numbers as well. So they have multiple presence, but the mother company is in Slovenia, and the pops are all over the world.
What regions do they have for the CDN at the moment?
They everywhere, like in Europe, North America, Asia, Middle East, and Africa. They have almost 120 points of presence, but obviously for the volume network, the high volume ones, they have less. I think it's like less than 10. There's one in Frankfurt, one in Paris, and then 3 in North America and 1 in South America, Sao Paulo. Actually, they have in Asia as well, Japan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. You can check the bunny.net is the website. It's worth mentioning. Yep. You can check it for yourself. Africa is not covered with the high volume ones, but the standard network has African pops as well. If that's interesting for you, it looks quite interesting. And I read that they also do origin failovers.
They have replication for the storage zones. Well, that's if you're using their own one, but I'm guessing you can configure non-bunny origins, as you should be able to. Standard CDN behavior. But it seems like they originated as a CDN. That's why they're called BunnyCDN, but they're expanding out into other things. So this as a base, they have a CDN, they have block storage, which I just read they are on. You can request early access to S3 compatibility, so that would be super nice. So you'll have like an S3 style interface for it instead of like FTP or whatever.
If you need it, right? If your existing stack is on AWS, it can be a bit easier to use. And also like
I'm
Terraform
hoping
state.
Like for Terraform state, exactly, to be able to do that. They have Stream, which I think is like video streaming service.
Yeah.
DNS, which I've already mentioned, and then the ability to purge caches. But the thing that got me excited, outside of being able to spin up a static website super quickly, was I looked at the side console and I saw Edge platform and I was like, magic. So I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
So I haven't tried it out yet, and I am going to try it out. Is the Cloud Run serverless, scaleway serverless containers kind of model.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works. I need to look into it, but it's usually you create a image repository, upload an image, and then just ask it to run it in certain locations.
I looked into it a bit. Like I went through the whole offering just to understand what BunnyCDN is. It's, although the name suggests that it's a CDN, but it's actually way more. You can run compute workloads on them as well. They have databases. We can talk about that. Obviously, they were like a pure CDN in the beginning for sure, but right now they have more offerings as well. On the CDN, you can run Edge script, or I'm not sure what terminology they use, but you can run TypeScript on the edges. So they have a compute component right there. But this is, I would say, nowadays standard for CDNs if you want to have some edge operations going on. The CDN DNA comes through because they also do video streaming, and they have a player as well. It's completely free. I think it's quite nice. So you can host your own videos, and I wanted to actually say maybe we could experiment with that, because we could host our own videos on BunnyCDN and use their own players. It has mostly the same features as YouTube: skip forward, backwards, and engagement graphs on the bottom, and the usual things.
But what's the storage cost like? The player is free, but what's the storage cost and the streaming and I'm guessing the traffic is what costs, and the storage.
Let me pull up the pricing. If you go to bunny.net/pricing, you will see all services in one page, which is quite nice actually. You can just scroll through it. It depends on the region, of course, but let's say Bunny storage, right? That's what you're asking. Single region is $1 per gigabyte. So in storage, they also have two tiers. They have HDD and SDD. So you can pick what the storage type is. So if you want low latency, you would pick the SSD, which is twice as expensive. And for a single region, it's $2 per gigabyte storage. So, but yeah, storage is not really expensive, I would say, anywhere.
But then
shouldn't be.
Well, that sounds like nothing, very cheap. But what about it's the outbound data, I guess, transfer through the CDN or the stream that will cost the money. The serving of traffic.
For videos, they offer transcoding, which is free, which is really, really interesting, because that's usually quite an expensive thing. We worked in video ads industry, and we had specialized hardware for it in the data centers, but they offer that for free. Obviously, they make the money on serving the traffic. So that's where they probably come back. But from a business mindset, I think it's pretty good that they take over the rendering of the different formats that they will need to serve it. So the $1 per gigabyte is the egress.
That's really good. That's nothing. I don't want to be. I don't want it to be we're just blowing smoke up their ass. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. I don't want it to be overly. We should be maybe a little critical on it. I can't at the moment. There's a bit of a limited offering.
Yeah, of course. They're not a full-fledged cloud provider. So that's why I started talking why do we compare, or can we compare BunnyCDN to, let's say, Scaleway? No, it's not the same offering. But if you have simple use cases, you run a website, you have videos, it's good. It's fine. They don't have proper databases like other cloud providers. So they have a SQLite database with multiple instances. I'm not sure what the technology behind it is, but that's probably not going to scale well. So it's not meant for big data use cases or anything like that. This is definitely more on the CDN side of the spectrum. And all the services that they provide seem to be in that area. For instance, they host fonts. They provide a drop-in replacement for Google fonts. So, and they say this way Google can't track you through the fonts, right? There's a debate on the internet, do they do that or not? If you're not using the Google fonts, they're definitely not going to be able to track you.
We should use that for our website as well. Now I think about it.
Yeah.
We should use their fonts. That's good. But so they have some edge platform stuff. I could see you making simple applications on this. Say you have a container maybe and you need a database. It could do some stuff, right? But there's no message queuing, there's no email, there's no IAM really. I haven't looked into it. You can add people to your team, but I don't know about permissions, scoping and stuff like that. There is very nice statistics and logging though. That I will give them. But it's all, again, CDN based. It's request based.
Yeah, I don't think they try to be a full-fledged cloud service provider. They're definitely a CDN, as the name suggests. So I don't think we should measure them against the bigger cloud providers. But within that space, the services that I've seen from them are quite neat.
Yep.
You mentioned the magic containers. That's actually how I would like to have containers to be run. You point it to an image, or you can point it to a repo and say run this, and it auto scales it. You don't have to care about Kubernetes, or you don't have to care about operations or anything like that. It just bloody works. That's what you want from a container platform. So, kudos to them. And from the documentation, it seems like they provide anycasting on top. So you can have the same IP address for all your bloody containers, which
That's
is
really nice.
So they took this to the extreme in a sense, like instead of having all those layers that we usually have to deal with, like the clusters and all the ingress controls and whatever, they just made an opinionated version of that. This is how it's going to work, and it works. You don't have to care about it. I think that's a really nice service. I don't know how it scales. I don't know the scale up times and how it handles spikes. Maybe worth a try if you have a use case that we could try. It's something like we have in Google or GCP. This is the not CloudRun. CloudRun, and in AWS the app.
The AWS one is not good, but I would compare it more to Scaleway serverless containers.
Yeah, you could do that, and they claim that you can run any protocol like TCP, UDP, or any custom protocol on your containers, meaning they expose this on layer 3, 4, right? So IP network or IP layer, so that layer 3. So you can run anything on it, which is very interesting because most of these container platforms offer you layer 7 application layer load balancers. Of course, like Kubernetes can do whatever, but usually exposing that is a bit of a pain. Of course, everything can be done on all the platforms, but I think they solved this quite nicely. So I think this is the most cloud service provider like feature they have. The most high level, I would say. But they also have the video streaming that we mentioned, the transcoding. You mentioned the DNS, which you have hands-on experience with as well. The database, the database I would like to look into a little bit. I wouldn't build enterprise solutions on a SQLite compatible database probably, but I can't I can't say anything about that. And they have, of course, like the network services like Shield, web application firewalls. They call it BunnyShield. It's a WAF, DDoS protection, rate limiting, bot mitigation, access list, so you could control like who has access to your endpoints, and upload scanning. So if you have something, they can scan for malware and whatnot on the uploads. So you can see like this is typical, like this is CDN-like features. This is not a cloud service provider, but if this is your use case, it's definitely worth a look. Right?
I do think the thing that grabbed me about it is it's very usable and very quick to onboard, right? So, and that's what I find lacking in a lot of EU cloud providers at the moment.
I think it's partially because they were operating not a niche, but in a very focused area, so they can keep it simple. Because if you have 200 services like AWS has, I don't know how many, but at least 100, and you have to design an IAM system for that, it's gonna suffer because you have to think of every combination and every role and every action. If you know that we're building a CDN, you can be way more focused and have a much cleaner product. I think that's what we're seeing.
That is definitely what we're seeing. It's super clean, and that like the interaction with the systems. I always tend to analyze that a bit more than I think is normal. I get very annoyed when it's like not very polished, but this just feels super polished across the board.
And you can see that they have a lot of POPs as well. I can't attest anything about of the quality of the network, of course, but we can come back to the SLA. But they also have these like value-added features on top of the CDN. Like if you they can do automatically resize and crop and what images just based on the query parameters that they see on the URL. So you could just upload your image as is, and then in the query parameters you can say like, oh, crop this to this size or resize it fully to this resolution. And that works out of the box. They call this BunnyOptimizer, and they can do this with CSS and JavaScript as well. So they can minify automatically. Typically, you would do that during the build process. So I'm not sure like if I would use this, but they have these capabilities. So this is a value-added service on top of the CDN. It's like $10 a month or something per website. But if you're not less technical, or you want to optimize on the egress costs, $10 is probably a good deal.
Yeah.
And you don't have to prepare all the images for all the formats and all the video screens and whatnot.
Overall, very impressed. I don't know what more to say about it. other than maybe give it a go. We should dig more into it. Like you mentioned SLA. I'm wondering, a small company in Slovakia, what's the SLA like? Is reliability up
first,
there?
they offer 4 nines, so 99.99%. This is generally stated on their website. Obviously, with the storage, they can do much higher. I haven't found individual per service offering, but what they do is, like every SaaS provider, like if they breach the SLA, you get reimbursements on your costs. And the ratio that I've seen is like if they have, God forbid, a 1 hour outage, you get like 10 hour back or something like that.
So 10 to 1.
So they are incentivized not to have outages, of course. And they seem to take this quite seriously from the documentation that I see and the way they talk about the technology. I think this is a focus for them. CDNs usually have very high SLAs because it's just storage and you can have as many copies as you want and whatnot. So I'm not sure about the individual services. What I haven't found is the more detailed, what certifications do they have? They mentioned GDPR compliance, but obviously in Europe you have to have that. But I couldn't find the EU sovereignty score. Maybe I just wasn't looking hard enough, but I couldn't find any indication of that. It would be nice to have that, and generally for all cloud service providers. Clearly, everybody uses Taiwanese chips, right? So on that front, I don't think they can innovate much, but they already in Europe. We know it's a European company, and they explicitly state that you can keep your data purely in Europe, of course. And they mention about the technology because it's state technology, it's European, so you can. So I think on the technology objective of the EU sovereignty, they would score high. Ownership, I don't know. So yeah, we would like to ask every cloud service provider to start publishing this. I think it would be, especially for the European ones, there's an obvious incentive to do so. If we would see those scores, it would be easier to make the decision, or, for decision makers to show, hey, look, just by doing this trivial switch, you could improve your posture.
Yeah, I mean, like just for the CDN product, it seems very good. And I would happily switch over on, say, CloudFront. I'm not sure. I'm wondering in terms of I'm thinking enterprise level CDNs, if it would be like, so say you have a S3 origin, just point the CDN to that instead. I'm not sure what the pricing is like compared to CloudFront and stuff. We should probably look more into this.
Do you mean like have the origin in AWS, let's say, and just use this CDN? But then you're paying for egress from your origin as well.
That's true.
Origin, but that's optimized. If it's not changing, like if it's static content, it's not an issue. But you can just put your files on the CDN. That's cheaper.
But I would wait maybe for the S3 compatibility to go through, and then it would be even easier to switch.
If you want to compare this, like I found a comparison site called getdeploying.com, and you can compare the different cloud providers, including the worldwide, like or American or German or French, and there's pricing. I don't know if the pricing is up to date, but you can compare it companies, and you get a general feel of how much it costs to store 1 terabyte or something like that. And then you can see the POPs as well. Maybe you have customers in Sydney. Do they have a Sydney POP? They happen to have actually one, but you could do your own research on this. And this is a very good site to compare.
It was Get Deploying.
We can pop the link in the show notes.
Put in the show notes, yeah.
And obviously, if you're a very big content network, if you have more than a couple of 100 terabytes, the pricing calculator switches to please call us. Obviously, you can get discounts, so it's worth talking to them. I guess if that's the case, what they can do for you, you might even get it cheaper than you would get, and you could have your content in a European provider.
I mean, that's usually my standard go-to. Is if I'm going to, as a big company, if I'm going to join a new company or use a new product, I'll call them or email them, because you want to have enterprise pricing, which is usually a lot cheaper.
Yeah, it would be super interesting to try the video offering out with the podcast. We could upload all our videos to the CDN and see and do the transcoding as well for mobile version for the different platforms, and use their own video player. Right now, our website uses the embedded YouTube links, but it would be interesting to see how much effort it would be or how it would perform. Maybe we could do an experiment with it. It'd be
nice to have like a EU sovereign hosting of our content.
So this is a very common trend in the influencer space, I would say. Like especially if you're talking about more controversial topics or just the war. your videos get demonetized all the time. So most of the content creators of this type are forced to get off Patreon, which is also hosting videos, get off all these platforms because they just don't get demonetized. But if you're running your own website and you're hosting your own videos, you're in control of your own own content. Not like we're doing so controversial things, but it would be a technically interesting.
I think it could let us deep dive it a bit more, as I think this is a very high level overview, just because we found what we think is a cool tool and we wanted to share that. But I want to try out the magic containers. I want to try out the database. We were discussing creating like a common cloud evaluation
standard stack that we try to deploy everywhere and then compare them, because right now we're just having subjective impressions about the providers, but we could deploy the same set of services, and we were thinking like we could have a stateful and a stateless application as well, so we would need a database, a standard stack what usually you would run, and then deploy it into each of these European providers and maybe stress test them or see how the auto-scaling works, or see if they have outages, or just ease of use. And so we could give them a European score. So we will probably start introducing this.
I will probably add a section to the website or something specifically for this, I think. And then we were thinking maybe have the website itself be the test bed. I mean, at the moment it's stateless. It's very simple, but like add a API container somewhere and a database. And because most of the cloud providers I've been trying so far, they have like a 15 or 30-day trial when you get free credits. And then after 30 days, the credits go away, which is not great. The only one that's different is Scaleway, and they gave you €100 off the bat, and you could just spend that however you want. But the other ones, like with this Bunny one, I think after the 30-day or 15-day trial, your trial credits disappear, and then you have to start paying with real money. It's the same with UpCloud. I was trying them out. They give you, so I'm not sure. I think this BunnyCDN and UpCloud, they have the prepay model. So you have to have money in your wallet to be able to pay for the services. Unlike Scaleway, which is more traditional, you pay at the end of the month with what you've used kind of deal. I don't know which one I prefer. I don't think it matters too much. But what's a little bit tricky is the trial credits. They'll run out, and then I don't know if they'll shut down if there's a grace period or anything like that. But we'll try. We're going to try them out. The point is that we can try these things out without having to spend loads of money, which we don't have.
Yeah, so we can save you some bucks, and then maybe we can publish this as blog entries or just the regular podcast episodes, and maybe maintain our subjective scores on what we thought it is. It would be nice if we could relatively quickly go through the main providers at least, and then we have something to compare at least.
So my goal, I guess, for this would be create this open testing framework applications or whatever, open source it, and then start testing them out. That'd be super cool.
One thing that we haven't found yet is a good SCM, right? Like, so we talked about Forjo before, that we're hosting our own, but there's no SaaS solution that we found. But you came across something.
So it was in the news the other day that this EU SCM solution called Tangled, I think it's Tangled.sh. I'm not 100% sure. Let me just double check that.
.org.
Or .sh as well. Both the same. So it's Tangled.sh. Had got like a €3 million investment. And I've been saying for a while that we need some sort of European Git provider, because we have GitHub, we have GitLab, we have Atlassian. First two are American. Last one is Australian. There's nothing EU based. There are smaller ones. They all seem to be based off of Forjo, the open source project, and they're fine, but they're small, and usually they don't have built-in actions or CI stuff. And like Coburg is the biggest one in Europe, but that's just for open source projects. But this Tangled, I thought it looked really interesting. And I still do think it looks really interesting. It's based on the, what's it called? The AT protocol, which is like the open social distributed identity kind of protocol. Seems very interesting, but the main issue is there's no such concept, at least now, of private repos. So I haven't tried it out properly. I signed up. So the main issue is there is no concept, at least I think not, of private repositories. So it's not going to be any use when it comes to business. So it seems like just a completely social open, like a lot like GitHub used to be, a lot more social, like coding as a social concept. I like it. I like the distributed nature of it. I think it's very cool. So they have, you can host your repositories locally or on the network. They call them NOPs. It seems very good from a high level view of it. But if you want private repositories, I don't think so. The former CEO of GitHub, the former CEO of MySQL, and a few others have invested in them as a seed. But I would say check them out. If you want to get off GitHub and stuff and you don't mind having open repositories, go to Tangled.sh and have a look at that. I'm saying here it says Nix powered CI. So they do have the concept of build pipelines and they look like they're GitHub compatible or GitHub Action compatible. So pick and choose dependencies for your CI/CD pipelines using Nix packages, one of the biggest package repositories. Support for Docker and micro VM based coming soon. We can look more into this as well, because I would, if we say we create this testing framework for testing cloud-based stuff, we can have that open source and then we can host it on something like this because it's open.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
That would be nice. And then we could have, I don't know, people could hopefully contribute to it. But like from a business perspective, I wouldn't run on this because there's no private repositories. I mean, I like the open nature of it. I think software should go this way. I don't think
it's worth a mention for sure.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So we'll add the link to it in the show notes as well. I have, like I said, I haven't looked in it super much. I started an account. There was some errors, but then I got set up. I haven't created a repository or pushed anything yet, but it looked pretty interesting just because we were talking before about there not being a European SCM provider. It's similar to Blue Sky.
Where are they from?
They seem to be Finnish, Helsinki based, which is very cool. More plus for the Nordics. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. Go Nordics.
Okay, let's wrap up this quick view of something we found cool episode. So just to wrap up, the summary is BunnyCDN, bunny.net, very cool, we think, product that if you want a CDN streaming, video streaming, or more static website hosting, I think is really good. And we keep an eye on the edge functions and the magic container and see if there's maybe we can do more of a deep dive into it and look into it more. And Tangled.sh, pretty cool new project that will maybe open up more open software within Europe. That would be pretty cool. Is there anything you want to add to that?
A bit of reflection. Like when we started this research on European cloud, I was quite pessimistic. We're like so far away because we're so blindsided by the big three. And we're spoiled by them, and by default we start using them. But if you start looking around, you actually can find completely appropriate, like usable cloud providers in Europe. Maybe not at the enterprise scale, or not yet, or very limited service offerings for an enterprise. But if you're a small or mid-sized company, there's no excuse. Like you can immediately just move your workloads and start running on European clouds if you want. I
mean, if you're using like Akamai, CloudFront, or Cloudflare, any of these US-based CDN providers, I don't see a reason why you wouldn't want to move.
Yeah. But generally, I think the state is much better than I thought it is. Obviously, it's not the same level, but I'm way more optimistic now, and we haven't even gone through half of them yet, or not even that. I'm quite optimistic at this point that we can have a fully European stack. Obviously, hardware is still a problem, but that's a problem everywhere.
So just to restate, we're not in any way affiliated with BunnyCDN or anything. They gave us the option in the console to set up an affiliate link, which we'll put in the show notes, just to, help us towards our hosting costs, I guess. If you want to check them out, check the show notes for a link to that. We have a new website, techleaguepodcast.com, where we'll probably end up hosting our own videos, but for now you can find links to everything, contact information, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. RSS feed is also there. And please get in touch if you have any subjects that you would like us to talk about. Otherwise, we're going to keep talking about EU cloud and EU sovereignty. And we're going to have some guests on, I think, soon. Some interesting talks coming up. Yeah. And we're going to release every Friday. So I guess that's it for now. Thank you, Christian, for joining me today. And I will see you next week.
Thank you. Puss, puss.
Thank you for listening to the TechLeague podcast. For more information on us, including links to socials and contact information, please check out our website at techleaguepodcast.com. We'll see you next week.